1944. The city of rubble. The road to St. Lo was lined with ghosts. Private James Miller and what was left of his company trudged forward through the wreckage of Normandy. Shattered villages, burned-out tanks, and the stench of death that clung to the humid air. The once green fields were now a patchwork of craters and corpses. St. Lo lay ahead, or what remained of it. The city had been bombed to dust by Allied air raids to break German defenses. Columns of smoke rose like silent tombstones, darkening the horizon. Miller stared at the devastation in silence, his boots crunching over broken glass and scorched brick. He thought of the promises whispered on the beaches, that they were liberators, bringers of freedom. But as he stepped through the charred remains of homes, past the lifeless shapes of civilians caught in the crossfire, the word liberator felt heavier than his rifle. The men marched on, eyes down. No songs, no laughter, no pride. Just the sound of their steps and the unspoken weight of guilt. Company C, dig in outside the southern quarter. Captain Morgan's voice cracked through the haze. We hold position until further notice. The soldiers obeyed. Trenches were dug into the ruins, sandbags piled where flower beds once grew. Tanks idled nearby, their barrels aimed toward the blackened skyline. The sound of distant artillery echoed from the hills. Miller crouched beside his foxhole, staring at what had once been a bakery. The sign still hung crookedly above the doorway, half burned but legible. Boulangerie Martin. The sweet smell of bread had long been replaced by the bitter scent of ash. Sergeant Hanley joined him, lighting a cigarette with trembling fingers. Looks like the whole damn place got flattened before we even got here. Miller nodded. They said it was necessary. Hanley exhaled slowly, the smoke blending with the gray sky. Everything's necessary in war, until you see it up close. Neither spoke again. The silence between them said more than any words could. At midday, a cry broke the stillness. Faint, human, desperate. Miller and two others followed the sound into the basement of a collapsed house. Beneath the rubble, they found 3 children and an old woman, covered in dust and fear. The oldest boy clutched his sister tightly. The youngest cried softly in her lap. The old woman spoke rapid French, her voice shaking. Miller didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. Hunger, thirst, loss. He handed them his canteen and a ration tin. The boy hesitated before taking it, eyes full of confusion. Gratitude mixed with fear. When they emerged from the ruins, Hanley looked up. Locals. Survivors, Miller replied quietly. Barely. The sergeant said nothing. He simply turned away, shoulders slumping under the invisible weight every soldier now carried. We were told St. Lo would be a victory, but standing here, it feels like a graveyard. Not of soldiers, but of innocence. Civilians wander like ghosts, searching for what used to be home. We give them water, food, what little we can. Still, it feels hollow. Davis used to say we were the good guys. I want to believe that. Miller closed the notebook and tucked it into his jacket. The pages were damp from sweat and rain, the ink smudged. Every line felt like a confession. Outside, thunder rolled. Not from the sky, but from distant artillery. The battle hadn't ended. It had simply changed shape. That night, Miller took shelter in a half-destroyed house. A piano sat in one corner, its keys blackened, wires snapped. The remnants of family photos lay scattered on the floor. He sat beside the piano and picked up a photograph. A father, a mother, two children smiling on a summer day. The frame was cracked, the glass spiderwebbed with soot. He could almost hear laughter echoing faintly through the dust, ghosts of a life interrupted. Hanley entered quietly. "You all right, Miller?" Miller didn't look up. "I keep wondering if this was worth it." Hanley sighed. "We don't get to decide what's worth it. We just try to live long enough to see if it was." The sergeant left. Miller remained, staring at the photograph until the candle burned low and the night grew heavy with rain. The next day, German mortars opened fire from the northern outskirts. Explosions tore through the ruins, collapsing walls and sending men diving for cover. Shrapnel sliced through the air like angry bees. "Return fire!" Morgan shouted. "Push them back!" Miller's squad moved through narrow alleys, firing from behind debris. Smoke filled the streets. He could barely see more than a few meters ahead. The sound of automatic gunfire echoed between stone walls. They advanced yard by yard, hearts pounding until the firing finally ceased. Dozens of Germans lay dead among the ruins. But so did several of their own. When the smoke cleared, Miller found one of the children from the cellar lying still in the street, too close to the fight. The boy's small frame was motionless, dust settling gently on his lifeless face. Miller fell to his knees. He had seen hundreds die, but this felt unbearable. That night, the rain washed the streets clean, or tried to. The boy's body was buried behind the house, beside others. Miller marked the spot with a single wooden cross. He couldn't sleep. The sound of shells in the distance blended with his own thoughts. We came to free them, he kept thinking. And now, they lie in the rubble we made. Hanley found him there, soaked and silent. "You can't carry all of it, son." "I have to," Miller whispered. "Someone has to remember." The sergeant looked away. "Then write it down. That's how we remember." By June 19th, the rain stopped, replaced by a suffocating stillness. From their position outside the city, Miller could see the horizon glowing, St. Lo itself burning block by block. The Allied bombardment had intensified to break the final German line. From afar, the city looked like a furnace. Roofs collapsed in waves of fire, and the church spire that once crowned the skyline toppled in a burst of smoke and sparks. The men watched silently. There was no cheer, no celebration, only awe and unease. Miller whispered, "How many more will die before we call it victory?" Hanley didn't answer. None of them did. St. Lo burns tonight. The air is full of ash and silence. They say it's the price of victory. But I keep thinking, who pays that price? The soldiers, the families, the children buried beneath the stones? I can still hear Davis' voice in my head, asking if it will ever end. Maybe one day. For now, we just move forward, one ruin at a time. Miller's hand trembled as he closed the notebook. The ink smeared across the last line. He looked toward the glow on the horizon. A city consumed by its own liberation. By dawn, the guns fell silent. The ruins of St. Lo smoked under a pale sky. The men gathered near the crossroads, faces hollow, eyes reflecting the destruction they had wrought. Orders came down from command. Move south, toward new objectives. Miller stared back at the burning city one last time. He could hear church bells faintly through the smoke, a sound both mournful and defiant. Hanley rested a hand on his shoulder. "We did our part." "Did we?" Miller asked quietly. "Or did we just trade one kind of ruin for another?" The sergeant said nothing. As they marched away, Miller opened his diary one last time and wrote only a single line. "St. Lo, we took it, but I'm not sure what we saved." The wind carried the ashes of the city behind them, swirling like snow. The war was far from over. Ahead lay new towns, new battles, and new ghosts. But for James Miller, something fundamental had changed. Not his courage, but his understanding. Victory had a taste now, and it was bitter.